All right, welcome everyone to the show. Today I'm speaking to Kirt Manecke, the author of these two wonderful books. We've got Smile, Sell More with Amazing Customer Service and Smile and Succeed for Teens. So Kirt, you're a distinguished author, best-selling books. I'm really excited and thrilled to talk to you today and learn a little bit more about these books and your personal sort of journey to the point where you've produced this wonderful content. I know that you've been working professionally in a few different fields in your career. So can you fill in some blanks for people that are watching, a little bit more about you, maybe where you're from and your background?
Sure. Thank you, Antoine, first for having me. Well, you and I were talking a little bit before about when I graduated from college and that I didn't do that great in college. Actually, at Eastern, had academic dismissal for, having a low grade point average. But I think persistence, I've learned in life, really pays off because I went to a community college, got all A's. And that was a real turning point for me because when I got dismissed from Eastern, I took a windsurfing class just because I thought I want to learn how to windsurf. Well, I wouldn't have written these books without it. So there's a little story there. I got back to Eastern, graduated, but it taught me about persistence. And I started working in college, at a windsurfing shop. And then when I got out of college, when I was looking for a job, I was working at a windsurfing shop. And that's when windsurfing was really big. And one of the customers approached me and asked me if I wanted to start my own store. And make a long story short, we did, and we did really well. We were a leading dealer for a number of manufacturers in the Midwest, and it was all based on customer service. And had I not had that happen to me in college, I would have never opened up that store and I would have never written these books. So that's kind of an interesting twist to everything. But after college, we opened up that store, and I just remembered my mom going to Sears when I was probably, 6 years old. And I shouldn't name the company, but Sears is usually good. But there was a salesman there that didn't treat my mom very nicely. She was trying to buy a present for my dad, a craftsman tool for my father for Father's Day. And most of the time we had great service there. But this particular gentleman, I remember thinking, boy, is he ever rude to my mom? There's no need for that. And I asked my mom, I said, why was that man so rude to you? And she goes, oh, it's okay, honey. It just happens in places. And I thought that shouldn't happen. That should never happen to people when they walk into business. So I think that's what really started my quest for great customer service, just treating everybody how you'd like to be treated, follow the golden rule. So at our store, which is called Surf's Up, we sold snowboards, inline skates, a ton of ladies' swimwear, Oakley sunglasses, a lot of technical goods. I created a 6-week training program before any employees were allowed to interact with customers because I knew as a startup, I can't afford to lose a customer, but also I want to give these teenagers who are working for me, I want to give them confidence. So they go on that retail floor, they're happy. If you walk in, they know they have the answers to the competitors' products, to our products. So that really worked well. And then after that, I was a tech rep in Minnesota for an inline skate company. I worked in PR and sales for a children's book author where I learned all about books. He was a book publisher. Had I not worked for Carl Sams and Gene Stoic, they were New York Times bestselling children's book authors. I would have never written my own books. I was also an executive director of a nonprofit land conservancy. I'm very passionate about our environment, land conservation, and animal welfare. So that's how I got to my books, really. I was working for Carl Sams, the children's book author, and I thought, why don't I write my own book based on my 6-week training program? Because obviously a lot of companies are not training their employees just on little things, how to answer the phone properly, right, when you walk in, how to smile. Just, you talk to somebody, you say thank you, they say, yep, no problem. It should be you're welcome. So just these, just the little things like Tom Peters, the author, talks about, the little things are the big things. So that's what got me to write my first book.
Okay. I love it. There's so much to unpack there. So you've just put a million other questions into my head that I want to ask. Let me just start with, I just want to say, I think it's commendable. You mentioned you had some of the challenges at school. everyone faces challenges, but not everyone's able to overcome those challenges. It sounds like you didn't let it get you down. You didn't let it stop you. You were able to sort of learn and adapt, and you succeeded nonetheless. I just want to say that's commendable. And I think you use the word persistence.
Yes.
Right. So I think that's wonderful. And I think about my own life, and I think about certainly faced many challenges, again, like most do in their lives. And I guess, you think back of some of the maybe advice your parents gave you, or we've heard, like, when you fall down, dust yourself off, pick yourself up, try again, this kind of thing. But it's really true, isn't it? I mean, that's really the difference.
It really is. Yes, never giving up. I remember hearing Dennis Rodman from the Pistons a long time ago say, just don't give up. I made it because I'm a professional basketball player, just because I didn't give up.
That's right.
Just don't give up. And I thought, that's true. No, just don't give up.
That's right.
Easy advice.
All right, wonderful. So tell me a little bit more about, you mentioned Eastern Washington. I'm just curious. We know that our early years in life are tremendously influential in defining sort of who we are as adults, especially those early years. So can you just talk a little bit about sort of your upbringing and the influence your parents had, and maybe some of the lessons they taught you, or if there were any other mentors in your life, that maybe helped sort of shape you?
Yes, I was fortunate to have wonderful parents. We grew up in a middle-class neighborhood. My mom was in real estate. She found this old mansion, this broken down mansion on a lake, and she bought it sight unseen because she told my dad, we're never going to have time to go look at it. My dad almost had a heart attack when he saw it. So the lawn was like 5 feet tall. The place was in disarray, but I was very lucky to grow up there because it was a wonderful childhood. It was an acre on a lake. We played hockey all winter long. We swam and sailed and windsurfed, during the summer. Well, at that time we didn't windsurf yet, but we had a Hobie cat. Just wonderful. And I learned from my parents. My mom was a realtor. She took care of the Ford people, because where I live, we have the big 3 automakers here. So she was assigned with her company to the people that came in from other countries to work for Ford. So she would always bring them to my parents' dinner parties, because she told me, Kirt, these people don't know anybody here. This is a way for me to introduce them to people. And my parents would become best friends with these people. But it didn't matter if they were Chinese, if they're white, if they're black. My mom was just always very welcoming. And I've learned that now. I noticed myself when I was in our Toastmasters group, we'd get a lot of people from India. I'd always go up to them, make them feel welcome, because a lot of people don't do that when somebody's new. They just forget. I think they're talking to their friends. So I think I was very lucky with my parents to learn to really be kind to everybody. And I watched as I grew up, just in high school, I would volunteer. And in college, I was in a fraternity. We did a lot of charitable events. And I just learned to give back. I think that's a really something that I'm really passionate about, because I was lucky to have a great childhood. I have a sales background, so I'm not afraid to ask for money. So I think that was instilled in me from my parents and from my upbringing, to always give back. I had a great childhood. Not a lot of kids have that. And that, I think, made a big difference in me too.
Got it. Okay, perfect. And you mentioned that your mother was in sales.
Real estate, yes, a saleswoman. Okay. Yeah, she was a good saleswoman though. Very good.
So it kind of runs in the family, I guess. Because you said that you did sales for a while, right?
I did. My uncle was a professional speaker, and he would go around and teach the construction industry how to sell. And he taught me at a young age. I asked him, I said, Uncle Gene, I was 16. I said, I'm not comfortable selling. I'm going to be on this retail floor. I'm nervous. He said, Kirt, quit think of it as selling. Just think of it as helping people buy what they need. And that changed everything.
Okay, I love that. I love that.
What great advice.
So talk to me about sort of the evolution. How have you seen sales sort of change over the years, and maybe things that worked in the past, maybe that wouldn't work these days that you've had to change? Any thoughts on sort of the evolution? How sort of, again, selling, you mentioned stop selling, just try to help align people with what they need. Can you talk about maybe how you've seen it change over the years?
I have seen it change, especially with the pandemic too. I think it seems to be, it's a little harder to get appointments, because you can't just, like I sell to schools, so now they're all on lockdown, with the things that
Right,
have been happening with school shootings. You can no longer just walk in
right,
and see somebody for 2 minutes. And I've seen that change. On the other hand, the positive side of it with Zoom and with the internet now on LinkedIn, you can connect with, just like you and I connected, you can connect with so many people who you'd never really be able to connect with before if they wouldn't come to the phone, or if you'd have to take an airplane flight out to see them. So I think it's
yeah.
easier to connect with prospects who you're trying to reach now, I think.
All right, let me ask you this. So if you put your sales enablement sort of hat on, I I I did a presentation once a couple of years ago on living in the age of the educated buyer, and how now, thanks to the internet, um, consumers have more information available to them at their fingertips than they ever have in the past. What you have, the result of that is, again, educated buyers, consumers that don't need to wait for a sales rep to sort of tell them, or what, they can, again, get what they need. How do you think that that has changed the dynamic? And have you seen a power shift? Whereas in the past, maybe a sales rep had a bit more sort of power or leverage because they held all the information, educating the customer on what they didn't know, versus now, consumers are walking into sales cycles knowing a lot more than they ever did, and maybe questioning the value of what a sales rep does or should do. What do you think?
That's a great question. And by the way, I saw your speech talking about that. It was excellent. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes, I have seen that. The consumer is so much more educated because of what you just said. They can do all the research. Really, the salesperson might be there just for maybe some things that they didn't know. So that salesperson, I think, has to be so much more educated on the competitors' products and on their product and on other benefits and features of their product. And they have to know that customer even better to anticipate, I think, certain things that the customer may not know that they need to ask. That's the difference I've seen, because when I talk to customers, sometimes I'm surprised at how much they know about my product. I'm thinking, wow, this is what, that I think this is because of the internet. They know all of this, because sometimes you're wondering, how would they ever know that? But they did their research. So yes, there's been a big shift. I think the salesperson really has to add value and be on their toes and anticipate some of the things beyond just the normal questions that a consumer might ask.
Right. So you mentioned when you owned your own business, you developed a training program, a 6-week training program, and you wanted to make sure that you properly enabled your team. Do you feel that organizations today, whether it's a SaaS organization or or other, do you feel organizations are doing enough to enable their people in general, not just sales reps, but just employees? And why?
I think the bigger ones are. A lot of the smaller ones, I don't think they are, like the car dealerships, other places. It's just they seem to put a ton of money into their headquarters, into their new building, but no money invested in the employee training. I always think of employee training as just giving that person confidence. I wouldn't want to hire somebody and put them out on the job without a ton of knowledge, and that would give them confidence. So I think the bigger companies have and enabled their employees to make decisions to help that customer experience be better. But a lot of the medium to small ones, I don't know how you feel about it. I just don't see it. I see it as getting almost worse.
No, I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. That has been my observation, is that most organizations do not do enough to enable their employees. More often than not, they'll give them a laptop and expect them to figure it out. And then when that person fails, they blame the individual, when really the responsibility and sort of the blame lies, I think, on the organization for, again, not properly sort of enabling their employees. So let's then talk about your first book, because you've got a couple. There's a lot to cover here. So your first book was Smile, Sell More with Amazing Customer Service, correct? This is the first one. So when I read through this, just clarify it for me. So I love the concept of smiling, and especially in the last couple of years with COVID, people have had masks on. You know, interestingly enough, I think through the eyes and what you can see of someone's face, even with a mask on, you can tell when they're smiling, and it still makes a difference. So it's tremendously impactful. But you say sell more with amazing customer service. So to me, initially, I'm thinking that sounded like a contradiction. Are we selling, or are we providing customer service, or is it synonymous? Can you just clarify for me what you mean?
Yes, I truly feel it's synonymous. And I saw it when we had our store, because think of it this way: if you provide great customer service, a great initial impression, whether it's on phone or in person, you've set that positive foundation. As simple as it sounds, those little things, like Tom Peters said, are the big things. So, people, as you know, buy from people they like and trust, they donate. So I think it goes hand in hand. If you don't have that great customer service, you're not going to sell more, unless you just happen to be a company where the changeover cost, the switching cost is too great, or they just have to have your product. It's too much of a hassle. It's just easier to keep going and keep renewing it every year.
I see. So can you talk to me about, again, it says the essential 60-minute crash course. So can you just give me an overview of like, what does that entail? What does it look like? What are some of the key components and takeaways?
Definitely, yes. I think it's all about the manners, just smiling, saying hello, answering that phone properly. If you went in a hospital and you asked somebody, where is room C, 300C, they don't, those rooms are really, I don't know who numbered those things, but they're all on order. So, you're going to walk that person to that room, not point. If you walk in a Home Depot or a Lowe's and you ask where a little spring is, you don't want somebody saying it's in aisle 33. Somebody did that to me about a month ago, and I came back, I said, do I get a trophy if I find this part? Because it's like a million items, a million SKU numbers in this aisle. He was laughing, but yeah, I think it's all these little things that we take for granted. But when we really think about it, Antoine, these are the things that make us talk about those companies. They go the extra mile. That's what brings us back time and time again for a lifetime to these companies. That happy person that went out of their way. When you ask them, do you do this? They just didn't say, no, we don't. They said, you know what? Let me go check and see. Let me find out. Maybe there's a way we can do it for you. So a lot of these things, the body language, the follow-up skills, if they say they're going to follow up with you, they do. I mean, I was on a chat with an auto dealer the other day. I knew they'd never get back to me. They said, can we have your phone number and email? I gave it to them. I knew when I gave it to them, I wasn't going to hear back. And it's been a week, I still didn't. So, following up, when you say you're going to, if somebody says, we're working on your car, it's going to be 3 or 4 days. Well, don't make it 7 days. If it's going to be 7, call that person in 3 days and say, I'm really sorry. Can we give you a rental car? To me, this is just, common courtesy, the golden rule. It's really just common sense. So these are just the basic foundation so that you can go to the next level. But if you don't get a lot of these things right, I feel like a lot of these businesses are going to lose customers. And they say 80% of companies think they're providing superior service, and only 8% of their customers agree. And you see it, I see it when we go into businesses, when we call places, where sometimes we're delighted and sometimes we're not. And when we're not, we sometimes tell people about it and we just don't go back.
That's right. That's right. The experience definitely is the leading sort of driver when it comes to loyalty.
Yeah. Like Trader Joe's, when you walk in Trader Joe's, all the people are happy, or REI and Dairy Queen. There's so many great places.
Those are definitely a few. I was thinking Starbucks is another.
Yes.
Perhaps. But now let me ask you a question. Obviously, the last almost 2 years now has been unprecedented times with COVID, and it's affected the world in many different ways. And I've been seeing and hearing stories of consumers being the ones that aren't smiling and not being friendly and being, in some cases, quite rude and hurtful to the employees of these organizations who are trying their best to be to provide customer service. So can you give me your thoughts on how we would coach, or we should coach, our employees when they're faced with those types of situations that unfortunately do happen and seem to be happening more and more based on the unusual circumstances that we find ourselves in?
That's a great question. And, when my friends and I go out, we just went out the other night, we thanked that waitress. We gave her everybody gave her a good tip. I was at the grocery store. I always say, thank you so much for working. And I see a lot of people doing that. But to answer your question, I think it's important to tell the employees, don't take this personally. Some people have a bad attitude. They don't realize that we're short staffed. They expect it to be like it was 2 years ago before the pandemic. It's
Right.
nothing against you. Don't take it personally. Some people just get that way. There are a lot of nice people who do appreciate you. Just, have a rhinoceros skin, let that bounce off you. That's what I would tell them, because it's not about them. It's just,
Yeah.
it's really a problem that people are having with their patients. And for some reason, they're not understanding that, we are short staffed and we're lucky to have these frontline.
That's right. That's right. And it's interesting. You said rhinoceros skin. I've read a book about Starbucks, and apparently in their training of their baristas, they actually talk about this concept of their apron, the green apron that they all wear, is their shield. And it protects them from, again, some of these, customers that sometimes maybe come in and are having a bad day and will vent their frustrations on this poor barista. And when I heard that, I thought, gosh, that's so horrible. Does it happen so often that Starbucks actually has to incorporate this into their standard training? And how sad that is if it's true. So I'm just wondering, can organizations do anything, you think, to not just train their employees, but maybe even train consumers in a way? Or is it the old, hey, customer's always right, you just got to take it, which I don't agree with, by the way.
I don't agree with that line either. Yeah, I think there are things like when I see a sign even in the front window, or maybe they could have it on their voicemail, on their initial greeting that says, please be patient, we're short staffed. That helps me. It reminds me, it jolts me back to, oh, that's right, we're in a pandemic. I can, I'm fine. I have a little more patience. So I think companies can, a lot of it too, I think, and I found this with our business, when you smile, when you walk in somewhere and somebody immediately smiles, say, hi, how are you today? Thanks for coming in. A lot of that is diffused. Like my friend is a police officer. He said, Kirt, we have so much trouble with these young kids coming out of college. These things escalate. And I said, it because of the initial greeting. Goes, yes, immediately. They're not smiling. They're not respectful. Immediately, that person is on the offensive.
Right.
And then it escalates. And I have a big fight where if they would have just been nice and say, hi, how are you, sir? Could I have your license? I hope you're having a nice day. None of that would happen. So I think a lot of it is like in our store, we rarely had problems because immediately when you walked in, you were treated like a guest in our home, like a friend. So why would that person be upset? And, you can always tell the person ahead of time, I want to apologize ahead of time. We are short staffed because of the pandemic. We really appreciate your patience and thank you in advance. Something like that, just to remind them.
Yes, indeed. So you mentioned, I think a lot of this is just core qualities that humans need to develop and possess, whether you're a consumer or a vendor. Because
Skills, yes.
We're all both, obviously. We all have work to do, and we're sort of vendors or service providers. But then we're also consumers, and as they say, treat others as you'd like to be treated. But I think fundamentally, there perhaps has been, I don't know. Here's my thoughts, and I think it's a perfect segue maybe to your second book, Smile and Succeed for Teens. I want to talk about this book, and my hunch is, I think that, is it possible that technology in a way has maybe desensitized humans in a way, and that we're used to a certain online experience where we click and we get what we want instantaneously, oftentimes. And when we are faced with humans in real life interaction, somehow we've conditioned our brains to think that it's going to be the same way, and it's sort of very stale and impersonal. So I'm just wondering, there's obviously a need for teens always, I think, but would you say that because of technology and text messages and Facebook and digital media, these types of things, that maybe teens have grown up with a certain experience that maybe is not lending to smiling, friendly, warm individuals when they're interacting with other humans in real life? kind of a mouthful. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's a great point, Antoine. I agree because, we're in this fast food, quick society, drive-through windows, like you said, online shopping cart, buy something on Amazon. They've already got your credit card, 2 clicks, you're done. You've got, so yes, I think when people experience a human that's taking an extra couple seconds, which in the internet world is probably like 5 minutes, they just don't have that. I've seen it. They just don't have that patience for it. So I think it has definitely influenced it because we're all on the internet. We're all on social media.
Right, right. So, and when I'm looking in the book here again, and I'll put links to both of your books on the description to the video once it's posted. You mentioned a crash course in face-to-face communication. So, kind of like we were just talking about, going beyond this virtual experience, which obviously because of COVID we've had to do more and more of, but that face-to-face communication is so special when done correctly. Can you talk about some of the key sort of skills that the book teaches that are important for everyone to know, obviously, but not just teens?
Sure. Yes. I think for, a lot of people tell me just take teens off the front cover and make it for everybody. But that book is based on my first book. It's all people skills, but I added a chapter for teenagers, how to volunteer and get a job. How to interview and get a job. Because a lot of kids don't know how to do that properly. So we're teaching them how to research the company beforehand, for example, arrive 15 minutes or earlier before the interview, send a thank you, mail a thank you letter the same day in addition to an email, smiling to make friends, how tips to overcome stress, get out in nature, walk your dog, because kids are under so much stress right now. How to volunteer effectively, body language, how you present yourself to the world matters. If you're slouched over, don't have any eye contact, you don't look really approachable and friendly. So those are some of the things that we've put in there, saying please and thank you, answering the phone properly, like we've talked about, Susie, before, just really face-to-face communication and a lot of job skills, such as we talked about, don't point, or if they're working in an office and they're talking to you and somebody else walks in, they don't ignore that other person until they're done with you. They immediately say, oh, hi, how are you? We'll be with you in a minute. Or hi, how are you? I'll be a few minutes. Let me go get somebody else to help you. Just little things that keep that customer delighted and bring them back. Even though these little things just seem so deceivingly simple, they're just not that common. And a lot of kids have not been taught that, including the cell phone etiquette that we
Right, good point. And I have a 13-year-old son, so I know.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Indeed. Yes, I'm trying to teach him how to answer the phone correctly.
Oh, there you go. Right, that's in there. And the other thing with that cell phone etiquette, just a lot of kids have never been taught that, so it's important that they know to leave those phones off at work.
Oh yeah, indeed. That's another thing for sure. So just out of curiosity, again, my son isn't really that receptive to any of my coaching, unfortunately. I have to pay other people to teach him things that I could teach him myself. I'm just curious, how has been your interaction with the younger individuals, the teens that you've worked with? Have you found them, willing to engage and sort of be open to your coaching, or have you encountered maybe individuals that push back and don't see the logic in it and subsequently aren't open to changing?
You know what? That's a great question. Most of them are very open to it. I'll get a lot of parents that tell me, these are the same thing I'm teaching my kids, but coming from you, they'll listen. But, I spent 9 months meeting with teenagers for that book. So most parents will tell me, like my cousin told me the other day, I caught Jeff, lying in bed reading your book. I'm shocked. They'll just leave it out on the counter. But teens helped me write it. So it's very positive. I haven't, I've never encountered any negatives. Most kids grab it and they like it. And it's because I had a lot of wonderful teenagers in a focus group help me write it with their great ideas. So of course it's upbeat and it's really quick and easy to read for them. But I think kids, kids are just small adults. They're just, they know they need to know a lot of these things, and it gives them more confidence, I think.
Well, it's funny. So by the way, I'm going to give this one to my 13-year-old and have him read. Luckily, he does like to read, so I'm going to give him this one, and I know he's going to enjoy it. But I was curious, I was going to ask you, you mentioned the process. You spent 9 months talking to teens. So just talk to me about that process, what that was like and what you learned from it that you were able to, put into the book.
We wrote that book about 70 times, my editor and then I took it to a group of, and I had moms, teachers, parents to look at it, people like yourself that are a parent. And then I had a group of teenagers I met with once a week, and I give them the manuscript and I told them, don't you dare let me put my retirement savings into a book that doesn't sell. I said, here's a red pen, cross out anything you don't like. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I want to hear the bad stuff. You can tell me what you like, but tell me things that you'd like to see in there. And I'd have my editor rewrite, then we'd meet again. And at the end of the 9 months, I handed it to them and I said, would you read this book? And they finally said, yes, we would. And I said, why? They said, because it's got stuff I need to know and it's nice and short. And I said, are you sure? And so, it just that we met every week, we had fun, we laughed. They gave me great input. I couldn't have done it without them. They're teenagers. The one teenager said to me, tell them not to chew gum in an interview. I said, would a teenager really do that? He goes, yeah, my friend did it the other day. So, you're just putting the stuff in from them. So that's what we did.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. I think about myself at 13, so I can relate to my son. I mean, I was awful. And I don't blame my parents for that either. They did the best they could. And at least in my personal journey, I know that I was probably quite rude to not just, salespeople at stores, but just other people, because I lacked the awareness of how my actions or words were impacting others, nor did I care. So eventually I learned that, but it took a while. So I'm just curious, is there anything we can do as parents or just as human beings to help others, especially younger adults, sort of acquire that skill sooner or later? Maybe that's empathy. Maybe that's just a certain level of emotional intelligence. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, I love that you said that. Yes, I think teaching kids that golden rule, treating others as you want to be treated, smiling, that's why these simple things are so important. Smiling and making that other person feel comfortable, because you might not be smiling and that person thinks, oh gosh, she's not very friendly. I think treating others as you want to be treated teaches them empathy, teaches them to always think about, oh, wait a minute, how would I want to be treated by that person? Let me make sure I'm being as nice as I can to that person. Those are the two things I would highly, highly recommend. I don't think we can devalue those two things because they are so important. I've seen them work. I had a young lady, a grandmother was helping me with this book. She said, my granddaughter is really in trouble. She's suicidal. She thinks the football coach doesn't like her. She's really depressed. She just read that section on smiling, smiled at her football coach. The football coach smiled back. That changed everything. She came home. She told her grandma, the football coach likes me. He doesn't hate me. He likes me. She said that changed her whole outlook. I mean, these little things that we think in our head, these negative thoughts.
Right.
And I've had that experience with a lot of teenagers who work for me. These negative thoughts, you tell them, just smile at the customer. Watch what happens. And they'll come back 2 days later. Oh my gosh, they really do like me. I thought they hated me. Yeah. So I would say, teach them to just be nice to everybody, treat others as you want to be treated, and don't assume that somebody doesn't like you, because that's in your head, not in theirs.
Got it. That's great advice. All right, let me just share my screen real quick. I have your website up. I'm going to put a link in the description of the video below. Can you just talk to me a little bit about your website? Because I know there's lots here about your books, but also you mentioned here online courses. So can you talk a little bit about that? I guess outside of books, people can take an online course to help learn some of these valuable lessons. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's right. I've got the book in an audio version at Amazon. I also created an online course for the kids that like the technology. And because of the pandemic, it gave the schools another way to teach kids. So the online course is the exact same content in the book. There's 7 chapters in the book. There's 7 modules in the course with the exact same words. The only thing we've added, because it's an online course, are interactive questions and answers, because it's online. We've colorized the characters that are in the book, and we added some curated videos and clickable links. So it's the same content as the book, but it's got some additional features. I tried to make it really affordable. It's only $24.99 for one user for the whole year. And for schools, there's a teaching guide embedded in it. So yeah, it's great if you have kids that would prefer to do this online.
So people can come here, they can sign up online, super easy.
Yeah.
It seems like tremendous value for the money. Outside of the books and the courses, I know you mentioned you do some public speaking. Are you doing any in-person sort of training as well, that you can talk about?
I'm starting with Terry Kirkovich from Autism Quality of Life. I'm going to be doing some coaching. She's getting her website set up right now. So I'll do one-on-one coaching by Zoom with people, group training with people. And I haven't really been doing anything else except just really volunteering, with some kids, just helping them one-on-one. And then I volunteer at some different organizations and do that.
Okay, and you mentioned something that caught my attention. You said autism. My youngest son is autistic. Can you just talk a little bit about what that is, what you're doing there?
Sure. My good friend Rochelle Vartanian has she has a son with special needs and with autism. She's got a big place called the Living and Learning Center, and she teaches social and job skills to, how old is your son?
He's 10.
Oh, he's 10. Okay. Yeah. She teaches from like 8 to 26. And I've done volunteer training with the Autism Alliance of Michigan, but these were for young adults getting ready to get a job. What she does is a lot of these social skills where she'll just bring a group of kids together and she will have them announce their name. They're really doing public speaking, but they don't realize it. They'll sit around in a circle. They'll meet different kids. So they're getting socialization. They'll dance. So she does a lot of that. For kids that are 10, she does like the video modeling. I don't know if you've heard that, where she'll show them maybe how to shake hands with somebody, but then they'll repeat it by video a number of times so that it gets almost embedded in their brain how to do that. Then they'll go practice it in different areas of the community. So she'll do a lot of that. There's a lot of, how is your son high functioning autism?
Yeah, he's verbal. He's verbal.
Okay.
So we're hopeful that through continued, help and training that, he can live a meaningful, sort of productive life. And it sounds like the organization that your friend has is doing some great work there. So I'll share a link to that in the description to the video as well. Kirt, we're just about out of time. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Are there any final words, anything that I didn't ask about you think is important for people to know, or any advice that you want to share?
I wrote just a couple things down. One book I really learned a lot from, Ray Kroc, Behind the Golden Arches, and Tom Peters. Those books, the consistency of customer service. Tom Peters used to say, no matter what McDonald's you went in, you still got that friendly smile at that front counter. It was consistent. Frito-Lay delivery, 99.9%, whether it's a small party store or a large grocery store. I would say, your customer service has to be consistent, because it just has to be. You can't have one person giving lousy service and another person giving great service. So that would be my advice, would be, train your staff, make them comfortable, make them confident, and really inspire them. Just lead by example, be an inspiration, and give them confidence. Just don't throw them out, assuming, like you said, don't give them a laptop and say, go to it.
All right, Kirt, this has been really wonderful. I've learned a lot from the conversation. I really enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Once again, for everybody, the books are Smile, Sell More with amazing customer success service, and Smile and Succeed for Teens. I'll put links to both in the description. Kirt, thanks again. It's been a pleasure. I wish you continued success.
You're welcome, Antoine. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. Thank you.